And welcome one, welcome all to another episode of the Black Diamond Podcast. This is episode 10. I am your host, Chris Hecker, and I am joined once again by my co-host, Jerry Durney. He's happy as hell still, and I am also in a much better mood than I was when we last spoke a week ago. We are coming for you, Salicata, so get ready. And
Now, stop tweeting.
yeah,
Stop
just
declaring things to be over when they are not.
yeah,
Please.
he just needs to stop in general.
I,
He doesn't.
I will co-sign that.
Yeah, I don't know. He just doesn't really add anything of value in any regard to anything. But how are you doing this evening?
Well, deadline's finally over. Vibes are kind of in a weird spot.
Yeah,
Get the series split with the Braves, which could have went better. You win the first two. You'd like to get 3 out of 4, but the Braves are who they are. They take 2 out of 3 from the Twins, and again, finding different ways to win. They win 15-2 on Monday night. They won a tight 2-0 game last night. Today, a little bit off the rails, but hey, look, you got the series win. You keep taking 2 out of the 3 the rest of the way, feel like you'll be in there. This team's lost one series since the start of June, and that was to the Astros, who were just as hot as the Mets when that series started. And they could have won that one too. Both games they lost were close. So just keep doing that. And I look at the next 2 to 3 weeks for this team. Their next 16 games are as follows. They're going to be in Anaheim for 3 this weekend. Then they have to go to St. Louis on Monday for a makeup game. Then they go to Colorado for 3. Then they're in Seattle for 3. And the Mariners are about where they are, roughly. And then home for Oakland for 3. And then the Marlins at home for 3. The Angels, not good. The Cardinals, again, about the same boat. Rockies, outright bad. Mariners, about the same level. A's, I won't say bad, but not good. And the Marlins just basically sold off their team. That's a 16-game stretch right there. I feel if you want to create some separation, because there's what, 8 teams pushing for 3 spots right now amongst the 3 wild card spots. If you want to create some separation and get yourself in that 1-2 range, you probably need to go 12-4 in that span. And out of those 16 games, at least 6 of them are at home. Like, you got to handle business there.
absolutely. I was gonna say like maybe 10-6 at a minimum, but 12-4 is probably 12-4 is probably more like it. Win a good 3/4 of your game, play 750 baseball. Over that next stretch, which will basically take us close to the end of August. So,
And make this
yeah,
Mets
you
series. They're
gotta
capable of it. We've seen it.
yeah you gotta take care of business against bad teams, and you also gotta take care of business against the teams that you are competing with for those playoff spots. Like the Mets did such a good job of going on this crazy run with Grimace and oh my god, and all the vibes were so high and everything, and they did all that fighting from where they were at the beginning of the season to get into a playoff spot, and then they play the Braves in that series, and they split, and unfortunately, like, just that was like enough to like be now on the outside looking in, albeit it's only a half a game that they're out of it by looking in, but still it's just unfortunate that you did all that work, and losing 2 games to the Braves kind of just put you like back, not back at square one, but it put you back on the outside where you're like fighting your way back in. So yeah, they do have a stretch against against some teams now that are I think we could all say are definitely not in any way superior to the Mets, and are probably very a lot of them are very inferior teams. So got to handle your business against them. Win 10 to 12 games at a minimum, and see where you're at then, and you hope you get some help around the league. But the trade deadline was about 26 hours ago. Both teams, both local teams made a few moves. Maybe some wish they made more moves, but as far as the Mets go, what were your thoughts on the moves that they made, or moves that they maybe didn't make, and what's kind of like your outlook, post deadline for the rest of the season? Has anything changed at all? Or are you still kind of in like the same boat of just kind of enjoying the ride?
Well, the one thing that was off about the vibes, Chris, is that in the midst of all that, and the thing that kind of deflates it wasn't even so much that they lost those next two games to the Braves. It's also that it followed Kodai Senga going down for what will likely be the rest of the regular season.
Yep.
And it just stinks that he looks like, he had 9 strikeouts in 5 1/3 innings. He looked dominant. He was throwing 99 right out of the gate. He was throwing the ghost fork for a strikeout on his first batter. And he's going against, and I realize it's not last year's Braves lineup. That's still a pretty good lineup they have there. And Senga was just going through them like it was not a problem. Like, all right, we're good to go. We got our ace back. We're going to make some moves. Let's go for it. And you couldn't even enjoy the first full start, and then he's down on a freak play too. And that kind of sunk the weekend more than the losses. Because if you split with the Braves, all right, yeah, you could have taken 3 and 4, but hey, look, 2 out of 4 is fine. As far as the trade deadline front, I think they did, about as well as you could have for the season they're having, for the team that they have, the expectations that we had coming into this season, and as far as where the season has taken them. I know there's people that are going to be upset that they didn't get Crochet or Skubal. That was a pipe dream that, let's be real, not realistic, and I'm fine with that. I think I said here on the show last week, I would have loved to have seen them get a legitimate 3rd or 4th starter in the mold of an Erick Fedde, which would have been great because not only is he good this year, he's relatively cheap, and he's under team control for next year. I would have been interested to see what the Mets price would have had to have been for him, given that he was in the 3-way trade between the White Sox, Dodgers, and Cardinals, which was a good get for St. Louis, I must say. And then as Sunday and Monday unfolded, or Monday and Tuesday, I should say, you're seeing some of these prices for mid-starters. I saw the Tyler Rogers price, and I'm like, all right, you know what? If they don't get someone, so be it.
Yeah.
Because, the price that Baltimore gave up, if that's 2021 Trevor Rogers, sure, I get it. He was a good pitcher that year and made the All-Star team. I get it.
Yeah, even IKF was the Pirates had to give up like a pretty decent prospect to get IKF. So the market overall, it seemed like it was very much a seller's market.
I feel like some of those pitcher trades, like if you put those in like dynasty leagues, I don't think they would get passed. I think people would be like, "What the hell?
Yeah,
you're getting that for Yusei Kikuchi?
That shit.
Yeah, what is there money under the table here? What are we doing?" So
yeah,
when I saw the Rogers,
buying this man a 30-pack of PBR.
Yeah, when I saw that Rogers haul, I'm like, all right, if they're just gonna move Budo back into the rotation, I get it.
Yeah.
So to get Paul Blackburn, which his record and ERA, it's not going to catch anybody's attention. But I'm also not going to hold pitching for an Oakland team that is clearly punting as hard as possible. I'm not going to hold that against him. Overall, the important thing to me, and I looking at his game logs, and I know he missed 2 months with an injury, but when he's been out there, it's usually 6 and 7 inning outings. This is a team that badly needs that right now. You need a guy that can give you 6 or 7 innings. And really in this rotation right now, I know it didn't go well for Luis Severino today. He gives you that chance. You might get that sometimes from Jose Quintana and Sean Manaea. You might also get a 5-inning out of them. More importantly, I think you need to be able to save your bullpen. I feel that, I've been saying this throughout the year, is they got overworked early because these starters were only going 5 tops. And I think it caught up with them a little bit. Reed Garrett's been out. Daniel Nunez went on the IL on Friday, which we didn't get to address that, but I was worried about that happening with him because they were going to him so much, which leaves the other thing. They did a good job there in fortifying the bullpen. They went and got Ryan Stanek from the Mariners. I know his numbers this year aren't the greatest. Got beat up in his first outing on Sunday. He's been mostly fine since. Also, someone that can pitch in big games because he was a part of the Astros bullpen that went to back-to-back World Series a couple years ago. So he can pitch in big games. I'm not worried about him. Huáscar Brazoban was a steal out of Miami. Granted, I know he's a little bit older, but someone who's pitching well right now out of the bullpen. And they only had to give up a guy who is currently, I believe, at Brooklyn, or was at Brooklyn, and had an OPS barely over 700. I think that was the big thing, too, is as each of those deals came through, it's, okay, what did they give up? The only one that I saw Mets fans really quibble about was Tyler Stewart for Jesse Winker, which I really like, too. One for the laughs, just because of the history that Jesse Winker's had with us. But I think it was after 2022 where it started to turn into okay, he actually likes us kind of thing. And we started to like him. And I think after that, I'm like, he's going to be here someday. Like, it's just going to happen. So which also he helps. Like they legit needed another left-handed bat. We don't know when Starling Marte is going to come back. Like, you need a legitimate everyday bat in right field. Tyrone Taylor's good when he makes contact. It's loud. And
especially against Garrett Cole.
But well, he did that, but you probably also can't have him out there every single day if you're trying to win the wild card. So Winker helps there. I saw a little bit of contention about giving up Tyler Stewart for him. He's a 25-year-old pitcher in Double-A, and he was, I think, maybe the Mets' 10th ranked pitcher in their farm system. Not 10th ranked prospect, 10th ranked pitcher. So if a guy's at 25 and he's just at Double-A and he's not ahead of Blade Tidwell or Brandon Sproat or Mike Vasil or Dom Hamill or Calvin Ziegler or any of those guys, listen, if he turns into something, then hey, look.
Cut your losses.
Yeah, if he turns into something, hey, look, it happens. The one I always think back to was in 2015 when they got Tyler Clippard. They gave up a kid named Casey Meisner who was having a good year at high A at that point for St. Lucie. And I remember Keith Love being like, what are they doing trading Casey Meisner for a reliever? I don't care how good Tyler Clippard is. Like, Casey Meisner has frontline potential. Casey Meisner never made it to the majors. Like, if they're comfortable moving a starting pitcher for a reliever, I think there's something to that. So all in all, they didn't give up anything major to do it. There were some rumors that they were going to go after Blake Snell and that they would eat all the salary because the Giants didn't want to pay it. I don't know how I would have felt about that. On the one hand, yes, if you eat the money, then the prospect return's not going to be anywhere as big. So a win there. The thing with Blake Snell is when he's on, and he's one of the best pitchers in the league. When he's not, it's 3 in the third innings, and he might have walked 7 guys.
Yep.
Also, even at his best, it's 6 at the most. Again, and I'm not diminishing the skills or anything like that. You don't win 2 Cy Youngs by accident. I don't know if it would have been the best fit, even for as good as he can be. And I realize he had a late spring training this year. He had the injury. Like, he might be finding form right now. I don't know if I would have made that move, but for a team that was not expected to contend, and who knows what they ultimately are going to be, I think that's about as well as you could have done. You restocked your bullpen. You got yourself a back-end starter who should be solid. I think Blackburn's fine. You got yourself an everyday bat in Jesse Winker. You know, it's unfortunate all this times with Senga getting hurt, but I think for a first trade deadline with a team that, you know, no one really can make heads or tails of, I think David Stearns did just fine.
Yeah, I would. I think I would agree with that. You know, overall, I thought that Jesse Winker did surprise me a little bit, and I know a little bit about the history between him and the Mets. But why don't you just give us like a rundown of what happened there? Like, it was something with like a fan said something to him or something like that.
So it started with that, and then in that same game, he makes a catch to end the game right by that same section. He made like a sliding catch against the wall into foul territory, and he waved bye-bye, and it was right where those fans were. So everyone's like, oh, he got him. And the next day he gets up and everyone's booing him. And I think like every time he got a hit, he did something. And then the next year was COVID, so he wasn't here. But then in 21, I think he was still with the Reds at that point, and he did something. And then the next year was with the Mariners, and something else happened. I think he had a go-ahead home run late, and people were giving it to, because now it's like, okay, now you actually did legitimately hurt us.
Yeah.
But I think something happened during that series where I think Jesse Winker realized, like, okay, like this isn't, Chase Utley hate. This is like,
This is
all
more
right,
like
you're
fun.
doing stuff to us and you're having fun with it.
Yeah.
We have to
Yeah.
respect, because
There was mutual respect on both sides.
he gave it resurfaced right after the trade, but he gave an interview during that series where he's like, I grew up in Buffalo, and being a big fan of their football team, I can understand the passion, and this fan base has it. They're intensely loyal and they love their guys, and I can understand and respect that. And he's like, this thing we've got going is special. And I think at that point, every Met fan was like, all right, you're good.
Fully on board.
Yeah. And like, that's when the jokes were starting, was like, he's going to end up here someday, isn't he? Sure enough.
Yeah, I think he was a pretty solid acquisition. Like my first thought, because you were actually the one who kind of broke the news to me that the Mets were getting Jesse Winker, and I was kind of like, I don't really think an outfielder is really what you guys need, but yeah, I guess it doesn't hurt. But with Marte being out, and it doesn't really seem like Marte is coming back anytime soon. I haven't really heard any updates on that. So, it does fill a need in the outfield there. You didn't pay an arm and a leg for him. I thought that, I mean, yeah, Paul Blackburn is, like you said, he's fine. And, if he kind of shores up the rotation even a little bit, I think that's a trade that I think that's a trade you make. All you really gave up was your number 25 prospect, who,
Right.
like you said, is kind of that's the one who's 25 years old, who's like only a top 10 pitcher at this point. So,
No, that was for Winker. They gave
oh,
up
that was the guy they gave up for Winker.
They gave up Wilfredo Lara, who's an infielder at high A, and he had an OPS like just barely over 700. That's one of those. If he turns it around, all right, cool. It sure doesn't seem like the organization sees that coming. So
yeah, like at that point, but even so, I mean, a top 25 prospect, to the A's, where you're trying to shore up your rotation for a potential run at the playoffs, and maybe trying to go somewhere in the playoffs. I don't think that's bad business at all. And I thought that I thought probably the best move they made. I thought the Tyler Zuber move was fine, but I thought probably the best move that they did make was getting what's his name from the Mariners.
Ryan Stanek.
Ryan Stanek, the reliever, because like you alluded to, he's played and he's played in big games before. He's been part of World Series teams, a team that won it and a team that made it there. So, the spotlight, the spotlight or the moment isn't going to be too big for him. And I think really that's probably, I would say, at least in my opinion, I think that I would say that bullpen is probably a bigger need than a starter for the Mets. Because I feel like, like we had discussed, many times with having Edwin Diaz waiting in the wings in the ninth inning, it's just a matter of bridging the gap to get there. So I think that's someone who, can definitely help bridge that gap if need be. And, hopefully.
I would agree in a vacuum about the bullpen, which like they still needed to address, but I think the Senga injury kind of changes that plan, because they were going to go to a 6-man rotation to try to ease the workload on him had that not happened. And now it's, well, we have to scrap the 6-man rotation and we still got to go get someone, because they were just getting by with Severino being their number one. And now you think, okay, well, if Senga's back, that's going to move everybody down a spot. We could deal with that. Well, now we're not going to have it. So I think that was part of it too. And especially because Tyler McGill had a chance to audition to, if he goes out there and pitches really well on Saturday, the front office can go, all right, maybe he figured it out. Maybe we don't need to go get a starter. He had a Tyler McGill start. So
yeah. So that definitely created some urgency. Yeah. And I mean, so it's like you basically went from like a having a 6-man rotation to Senga going down, then it's like you kind of barely have a 4-man rotation. So obviously that's not really going to work. So yeah, I guess it was pretty necessary for them to get a starter as well. But yeah, I mean, overall, I thought they did pretty good business. I know that in the weeks leading up to the deadline, I am glad that both teams were in a buyer's market, even though it may not have been like as aggressive as some fans would have wanted it to. Like, I'm glad that the Mets didn't try to, granted, they may watch him walk for nothing at the end of the year, but I'm glad the Mets didn't just like turn around and flip Pete Alonso at the deadline or do anything like that. Because like with all the grimace stuff and everything that's going on with that team, to just say like, oh no, like even though maybe like in the long run, like it might be the quote unquote smart thing to do.
Right.
Even though that is like kind of debatable, I'm glad they didn't do it. I'm glad that they like kept him around, and that they tried adding to kind of make the most of what could be the last year that they have with him. So
I think
they
owed it to
didn't
that
really break
group.
the bank to do it.
I think they owed it to that group
Yeah.
where you can look and go, hey, look, this season was over on June 1st. And now here we are on July 30th, and we're in a wild card spot. I think, and again, they didn't have to break the bank and go crazy, but to just give them some reinforcements like, all right, we know this bullpen's a little taxed. We're going to go get 3 guys. Senga just went down. We're going to go get you a starter. All right, we don't know what our right field situation is. Here's the National League leader in on-base percentage. We'll go get him. I think to at least show a sign of good faith of, hey, we see all the work you did to get back into this. No one expected it. You guys made this happen. Here's something. Go get a playoff spot. So but without going over your skis and doing something like what San Diego did, where they traded 6 of their top 12 prospects for 2 relievers.
Yeah.
Because I look at that, I'm like, man, I think Tanner Scott's good. I don't know if he's that.
Yeah. I mean, like I really wanted the Yankees to get either a Mason Miller or a Tanner Scott at the deadline. Still kind of wish they did. Because I mean, watching Clay Holmes really any time over the past week or so has just been like, been taking years off of my life, and anyone else that might be rooting for the Yankees.
I just love hearing Yankee fans anytime during a bullpen meltdown being like, man, this is how y'all live for 20 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, like,
wow.
And it's like, yeah, and it's like, all right, like I know that like there's never gonna be like another like Mariano Rivera or another like Trevor Hoffman or anything like that. But it's like, god damn, like at this point it's like I'm expecting Clay Holmes to like come out and blow the save. Like like kind of like what you were saying with when Diekman was pitching the Judge. Like today I was watching the Yankees Phillies game, and like Mark Leiter, who we acquired at the deadline from the Cubs, he gets through the 8th. It was definitely still it was definitely pretty stressful. Like I was glad that we got a bullpen arm. I would have liked to get maybe more than one, but we got Mark Leiter Jr. From the Cubs. I'm sorry, for Ben Cowles and Jack Neely. Just reading up on it now, they gave up 2 24-year-old prospects. Cowles was hitting 295. He had 9 home runs and an 848 OPS in 88 games for the Somerset Patriots this season. And then Jack Neely had a 2.1 ERA and 13.5 Ks per 9 over 31 relief appearances between Double and Triple A. I do actually, from that, I do think that was kind of looking at it now, like I know they weren't like top prospects or anything like that, and that we are trying to we are in a situation where we are buying and trying to improve our team, but to me that does feel like a little bit of a steep price to give up those prospects. Now we'll see, hey, if they ever amount to anything, then then I'll remember this day, and I could tell people that I am, that I was right, that, maybe they gave up too much for Mark Leiter Jr. I don't know how much of it was like, oh, we had Mark Leiter Sr. on our team. Wouldn't it be cool to get Mark Leiter Jr.? Because before the deadline came, there were like all these rumors that the Yankees were like, that they wanted to like pick up Rich Hill, or they wanted to like trade for Jameson Taillon, like, or like I think Gio Urshela's name was mentioned. Like it just seemed like it's like, oh, or like Mike Talkman too. It just seemed like, oh, we're just gonna like get players that we had in the past or that we have some sort of connection to.
The
So
Will
I don't
Clark
know.
special.
Yeah. So I don't know how much of I don't know how much of it that went into it. But and then I guess but I don't know. I guess I guess like we had mentioned, it was a seller's market for sure, which is probably why they were like not able to, even though they had like were tied to like a bunch of Tampa Bay Rays players that they ultimately did not get. Um, why they probably weren't able to get deals done, because like the price was probably so steep, and also like you have to pay the division premium as well. But yeah, I mean, early takeaways from Mark Leiter Jr. He definitely has good like swing and miss stuff, and a great fastball, and he can strike people out. He does give up some soft hits, but like overall, I feel like as far as like late innings and late in games when you're trying to close them out, I still feel like games down the stretch are going to be, a stressful endeavor with him and Holmes as like as your back end relievers. Like today, the Yankees had they had a 6-4 lead. They get out of the eighth inning. They only gave up one run, but it could have been a lot worse. I mean, Leiter did load up the bases at one point, but to his credit, he then he then turns around and he strikes out Brandon Marsh on some on a really nice changeup to get out of that. And then Holmes comes in and he kind of does his thing, and it's like, oh shit, here we go again. But then Gleyber turned a nice double play for us to get the win. So I am pleased that they got Jack Leiter Jr. As far as bullpen help, they also got Enyel De Los Santos from the Padres, as well as Thomas Balboni Jr. And Enyel De Los Santos, I mean, it's another one of those moves where like his numbers this year are like not particularly, his numbers are not particularly great. But overall, I would say they definitely got better. I mean, like they got rid of Caleb Ferguson. They traded him to the Astros. So like they got better and the Astros got worse as far as I'm concerned. So like that's a win in of itself. And I mean, De Los Santos, he has a 4.46 ERA, which is like not wonderful by any stretch. But he does have almost 50 strikeouts, and his whip is pretty good. It's a 1.289 whip. So, overall he provides some depth into the bullpen as well. And, I doubt he's going to be like really pitching in high leverage situations, but you really never know what could happen. And, around this time of year, you can really never have too many bullpen arms. So, no real qualms with that move either. I think that it's good that they did put a focus on bullpen, even though I felt like they did have some bigger needs. But the recent struggles of Clay Holmes, who I believe now leads the league in blown saves, definitely amplified the the need for that. De Los Santos also has a 10.7 Ks per nine and a 28.2% strikeout rate. So hopefully it's someone that Matt Blake can work with. Overall, since Matt Blake has become the Yankees pitching coach, he's done a pretty good job of kind of like making making something out of nothing. I mean, he turned Michael Tonkin into a pretty serviceable reliever. Luke Weaver kind of came out of nowhere and is like,
Yeah.
very good now. So, and like, I don't think either of these guys are bad, but I hope that, I am hopeful that that Matt Blake can make them even better.
I would
The
look for
real
Mark Leiter Jr. this year. I saw a few people saying, "Oh, his ERA is over 4. Can you trust him?" I always feel like that's a bit shaky to use against relievers because, yeah, those are runs being charged to them. But how many times does a reliever come in and doesn't get to finish the inning? And it's like, okay, a guy got on against you, but you got 2 other guys. And then manager brings in another guy for the third out and he can't get it. And then that ends, or something wonky happens. And then that's a run on you,
Yeah,
I would look for
it's also a much smaller sample size too.
right.
Like you're not making, you're not making nearly as many appearances. There's been 80, 90, there's been like 90, almost 100 games played this season for most teams.
And Mark Leiter, I think, is at exactly 40 now. But his FIP is at 2.22, and his ERA is over 4. So that means he's had a little bit of bad luck, which means so he might not be as good as 2.22, but he's probably not as bad as 4.
4 point, yeah.
So he's probably somewhere in the middle there, which
same case with De Los Santos. I mean, he's played in 44 games, and he has the 4.46 ERA and a 1.289 WHIP. So he probably if you even it out, he's probably like in the high, like maybe like the threes for both of those.
Yeah.
If you even it out over a larger sample size.
I wanted to get your thoughts before we get to the big Yankee acquisition. Thoughts on them not being able to get the deal done for Jack Flaherty?
Yeah, good question. So I was definitely disappointed at first. The Dodgers did give up kind of a pretty penny for him. They traded their number 8 overall prospect and their number 22 overall prospect, which is a pretty penny, but also like, I don't know, I probably would have done it. And then the story comes out that, and we also would have, it was also rumored that we would have flipped Nestor Cortez in that trade as well, which I would have been perfectly okay with. I don't hate Nestor Cortez, but watching him pitch can be an eyesore for a variety of reasons. Because number one, when he gets hit really hard. And then he does all the dancing around and the leg kicks and stuff. And
I can't imagine how annoying that shit is when he's got an ERA over 4. It's like, just man, come on.
Yeah, and then the quick pitches. Yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah, it's a little ridiculous. So I would have been. I definitely, especially because I mean, he had a pretty decent start today. He gave up 3 runs over 5 1/3 innings. And I think he ended up getting the win today. But and so overall, like he pitched pretty well, and in the early innings especially, he was definitely dealing. But it's like it's one of those things where it's like you never really know what Nestor you're gonna get, and when you get the bad Nestor, it's really bad. And especially like going in the playoffs, like I think that once Clark Schmidt is healthy, there's a good chance that they might demote Nestor to like a more of a long reliever role, or maybe they'll do like a 6-man rotation at first to kind of get him acclimated and then send him to the pen. But as far as not trading for Jack Flaherty, I was a little disappointed that they didn't trade for him. Not that I think that a starting pitcher is our biggest need, but I think it would have helped, especially like with how much the starting pitching kind of came back down to earth over the last like month and a half or so. Like that's kind of like when the Yankees kind of started to go through their June, July swoon. It kind of started with like the wheels kind of falling off with the pitching. So I think that adding Jack Flaherty would have been nice, because then you have like a real solid like top 3 of your rotation with Garrett Cole, him, and Luis Heel, like you feel pretty good about having that type of rotation going into the playoffs. And given what it cost the Dodgers, I would have done it. Apparently, the Yankees backed out because they had injury concerns with him, where he had like something with his physical and like a back injury that was that was concerning to them.
Dan
I don't know.
Zimborski from Fangraph said, considering that the Yankees watched Rizzo play for 2 months with a 496 OPS before wondering if maybe the concussion was still an issue, I have to assume that they found Jack Flaherty's spine must have been made of Twizzlers.
That's a good point. I didn't even really necessarily think of it that way with Anthony Rizzo, but it is kind of funny how like they kind of pick and choose like when they want to be concerned about things like that. So overall I would have done it. And, to me, it's like, all right, like, the Dodgers have, the same resources as the Yankees do, if not more. And, I'm sure they were aware of this information too. And they still decided to make the deal. And, if he was good enough for the Dodgers to say, yeah, like we're gonna kind of maybe not ignore this issue, but we're gonna overlook it. I don't know why. I don't know why we couldn't have done it. But
I will say the Dodgers probably are in a more desperate spot because just of how much injuries they've had to their staff, where it's, Yamamoto's out. I think Glasnow's out right now. Walker Buehler's been dealing with stuff.
Yeah,
they had
Kershaw's back now, but like you never know,
right?
With him where he's at in his age,
and Glasnow's someone that it's never exactly been the picture of health. So
yeah, he's made of glass now and always,
folks. I mean, and even the prospects they've come up, like they thought like they're getting Bobby Miller off the IL, and he had a good rookie year last year. They had to send him back down because he's been getting beat up. They had Landon Knack come up. They sent him back down. So I think they're just looking for anybody. It's like, okay, you're a healthy body. You're healthy at the moment. All right, great. Come on board. I think they're just hoping for anything that works right now. And when you have that kind of farm system where you can just turn around and trade guys and not even think about it, like they gave up Keibert Ruiz and Josiah Gray for Scherzer and Turner in 2021. Didn't bat an eye to do it. Hasn't really hurt them.
Yeah, they traded
like that.
Yeah, they traded Yordan Alvarez to Houston and
for Josh Fields.
For Josh Fields, and like, yeah, it really didn't affect them at all. I mean, I'm sure they would love to have him.
Josh Fields was the losing pitcher in one of the games of the 2017 World Series. I would counter it did.
Yeah. Hard to argue against that. Yeah, so I mean, yeah, it did affect them negatively, but like going forward, like it really didn't affect them. Like, I'm sure like if they had him, it would probably put them even more over the top. But they probably still might find a way to like
probably would have just signed Shohei as a pitcher,
choke in the divisional round. Yeah, but either way, like they were a team that was kind of able to get away with trading a player of that caliber and like still be like contending for the World Series, at least theoretically, like every year. So yeah, they were probably in more of a position of number one, desperation to get a deal done for a starting pitcher than us, and number two, probably in more of a position of luxury to having a deeper prospect pool to get the deal, push the deal across the finish line. But
because I think for your guys the biggest issue is that it's not health. It's all right. Well, we just have to hope Cole gets through whatever's going on right now. We have to hope that Stroman turns back into the pitcher we paid for. We have to hope Rodon turns back into the pitcher we paid for. Like that's like if these guys just get back to like don't even have to perform above their career averages. You just get to their career averages. Like we should be a perfectly fine rotation that doesn't need to get anybody. It's just the fact that they're performing a little bit below that right now that makes you think, oh, well, we got to go get someone.
Yeah.
You got to hope that stuff evens out, which it usually does.
Yeah, and Rodon, for as erratic as he's been, his last couple of starts have been pretty good. So here's hoping that here's to hoping that he's turned the corner and kind of put that pitchers go through slumps just like hitters do. So hopefully he's kind of put his slump behind him. Stroman's an interesting one because you really don't. It's like you really never know what you're gonna get with Stroman. Like during for a lot of that losing stretch that the Yankees, I would say at this point that they are probably, I think I can say like they're kind of out of it. They made the acquisitions that they made and they just swept the Phillies. So you know you hope that that the stretch of baseball that they played in June and July is like behind them. But during that stretch, Stroman was kind of like the while Cole was like still like finding his footing, like getting back into his groove, and while Luis Gil kind of went through his first like hiccups as a starting pitcher in the MLB, like Stroman was kind of like the horse in during that time where like, all right, like we're on a losing streak and we need you to come out here and stop the bleeding. And he would do it. And then he did it for a while and then he stopped doing it. And now it's just like, all right, like whenever this guy pitches, I have no idea. I have no idea what to expect.
Well, the thing with Stroman, and I can speak from experience on this,
Yeah.
it's not so much whether he has a bad stretch or a bad start. I think most rational people understand, like you said, pitchers can be streaky too. It happens. Even good ones can have a 2 or 3 week stretch. That's fine. With Stroman, is he going to have a bad start and then go online and start trashing his teammates? Because we've seen that. We've seen that at multiple stops. And as that was happening last Saturday, I'm like, man, I told one of my Yankee fan friends, you should be thankful they hid Twitter likes because boy, Stroman would be having a
Oh
fiesta
boy.
tonight if those were still available.
Yeah, I mean, he might have had
even the shit he pulled with Glaber a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I applaud Judge for doing what he did because
Yeah.
that absolutely shouldn't have happened. But stuff like that, he can,
Yeah.
that chip on the shoulder drives him, but he'll do shit like that too.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, he might have had, for all we know, he may have had his own private little, Twitter liking fiesta. But it
Fair.
seems like overall, I think ever since he signed with the Yankees, I think they must have like, they must have talked about it like before they signed. And they must have been like, listen, that shit you were doing when you were with the Mets and the Blue Jays, like, that shit's not really gonna fly with us. And then, yeah, I applaud Judge. I applaud Judge for kind of, and me and Case actually discussed this on an episode like kind of right after that whole thing happened that weekend. I do applaud Judge for being like, hey, we don't do that around here. Like that's not how we handle business and this and that. And he seemed to get the message. But one thing in Stroman's defense, I kind of not that and like if you look at the play that he was actually like yelling at Glaber for, that he was actually like mad about, he kind of turned the play like as fast as he could. It was just a tough play and he couldn't throw him out. So I really didn't have an issue with like Glaber's lack of hustle or anything on that play. There are plenty of times where like that criticism's actually warranted. But part of me didn't mind Stroman like going after him like that because I was like, all right, like this team's like, kind of like a little dead in the water right now, and like maybe we just need like, we need a little passion, we need a little spark, like hey, if Judge says, hey, we don't do that, then we don't do that. But I wasn't as appalled as some people were that he went and like yelled at Glaber. I just think that the actual play that he was yelling about wasn't the right play to yell at him about. But I think there are plenty of times where Glaber's lack of hustle or lack of fundamentals is a legitimate criticism or legitimate knock on his game. It just wasn't on that play. But yeah, part of me was like, all right, like I kind of get why he flipped out that way.
It's just the two sides of that would be like, okay, well, that's got to be something that when you get in the dugout, like talk to him, like, and hey, look, you know, that ground ball over there, hey man, because and this leads to point two. If he gives up one that goes 480 to dead center, and the rest of his infield turns and stares at him like this, like, he wouldn't want that either. You know, it's a goes both ways sort of thing. Like you wouldn't want your infield like being mad at you if you give up a meatball. So how are you going to get on him for that? Like it's a respect thing.
Yeah, and I mean, also to his credit, also in that game, Gleyber did hit a home run, like in the later innings, and Stroman was like the first guy like out of the dugout to like high five him. So he did, you know, so he did, you know, make things right, or you know, at least try to. So yeah, with Stroman, yeah, but like as far as like him pitching, you know, you don't really know what you're gonna get these days. That game on Saturday was quite the barn burner. You know, you get off to the 3-run lead, and it's like, all right, Stroman, like you got run support, and he was just like, no, I don't. and like, you know,
I've decided to increase my rent. That's how much I believe in my hustle.
Yeah. I'm actually going to tip my landlord this month. He's been working really hard, and he deserves it. So yeah, you know, overall, yeah, it would have been nice to add another arm. Flaherty would have been nice. It seems like Garrett Crochet's asking price and Tariq Skubals were both probably just astronomically high, because I mean, it's not like no team's got deals done for them, and they were like kind of like the headlining starting pitchers like that could be seemingly available. You know, and no one really came out with that offer. So maybe they really did want like a Jackson Holiday or like a top 5 like blue chip type of prospect for him, and you know, maybe teams were just like, yeah, we're just not going to do that.
And let me be the first person to correctly use this phrase today. Jackson Holiday hurt everybody.
Oh, he did. He heard y'all.
Kev, I love you, but come on.
I think he had to have been doing a little bit of trolling there. Like
I don't think Kevin's a day drinker, so I don't think it was that.
Yeah. But I mean, maybe just some good some good old fashioned sober trolling on the timeline.
Like, by the way, I do want to jump onto the DJ 6 RBI game real quick.
Yeah,
at the All-Star break, Bleacher Report came out with their list of best right-handed pitchers in the game right now, best left-handed pitchers, and they put Christopher Sanchez number 5. And I'm gonna try to find the list as quick as I can here. They put Christopher Sanchez number 5, and they had Ranger Suarez number 1, which crazy that he was ahead of Skubal, because I think I said here last week, Skubal should have been starting the All-Star game. Yeah, they had Christopher Sanchez ahead of Cole Reagans, Max Fried, and Shota Imanaga. And if you give up a grand slam to DJ LeMahieu, like, you're off the list, pal. I don't know what you want from me. It seems like an easy task.
Yeah, that I think that's like an automatic. That's like an automatic. You're done. You're not on this list anymore.
I really could not believe.
Yeah, no, the list is a little ridiculous, and yeah, definitely like, yeah, I think Tariq Skubal should definitely be number 1. I don't think that's disputable. I probably put Crochet at 2. And then I probably put Sale at 3 with the season.
They had him 4th.
Having. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, actually. You know, I don't have issues with like Cole Reagans or Max Fried being there. Tyler Anderson, I don't know. Imanaga, I think maybe should be a little higher. I'd put an Imanaga above Christopher Sanchez for sure.
Yeah.
And like Ranger Suarez, I'd probably put him in the top 10, but maybe towards like the back half of it. And like same with Nick Lodolo. I think him at 10 is probably fine.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, that's to an extent, that's just kind of Bleacher Report being Bleacher Report.
Good point.
They do those things. They do those things. They like the attention, and they know what they're doing. And especially nowadays with in Elon Musk's internet, any account that has any account that has a check mark is is basically just farming for engagement. So
and I'm
so
guilty of it
I
too.
think
I eat the trash too sometimes. So
yeah. Sometimes it's like, all right, like I know this is bait, and I know that by engaging with this, I'm like giving this person money and actually like supporting them, like whether it's a person or a company or an entity. But like sometimes I'm like, all right, I have to say something because this is just fucking ridiculous.
and it's that time of the month. It is the 31st.
Oh yeah. The rent is
they're
due.
ramping that up.
The rent is due. Like the takes on like between like the 25th and like the first of the month, the takes on Twitter are always like a lot more they're a lot more ridiculous than usual. But moving on, so we talked a good bit about some of the bullpen arms that the Yankees acquired, but the biggest move that the Yankees made was on Saturday when they traded for one Jazz Chisholm Jr. And
Jazz?
And I gotta say, I don't think anyone in the history of earning pinstripes has earned pinstripes faster than Jazz Chisholm Jr. has. The Yankees traded for him on Saturday, and in his first 2 games as a New York Yankee, he hits a total of 4 home runs. He, just pretty much provided an instant spark and an instant, just instant life into a lineup that desperately needed it. And that also lined up with the return of Giancarlo Stanton, who still kind of needs to get going, which is fine. But it's just good to have him back and have that protection in the lineup. But yeah, I mean, yeah, Chisholm's done wonders for this team. And I'll be honest, like when we first got him, or like when the rumors were out that like we were tinkering with getting Jazz Chisholm, I was like, I don't know how good he actually is. But he's definitely, but it's like, how good can you be when you're the best player on the Marlins and there's no one else there and there's no protection in the lineup after they traded away the rest of the team before you. So, but anything I said that was even remotely negative about Jazz Chisholm, I immediately had to rescind that. I mean, 4 home runs in 2 games, like basically, he basically won us the game against the Phillies yesterday. And he played a big part in winning the first game of that series. So, Chisholm he's paid immediate dividends. He also gives the Yankees some much needed speed. I think this is something we briefly discussed before where, outside of Anthony Volpe, they really had no one that could like steal bases or like, really like give them speed on the base pass or like even like, go first to third or second to home. Like they were just solely relying on, basically relying on the home run ball. And, they still are, and he's still hitting them. But, having him out there on the base pass too and everything that he adds there, just it's like a whole nother dynamic that this team has been missing. And then, he's versatile in the field. He can play in the outfield because honestly, when we first got him, I guess he's more of at this point, I don't really know whose replacement he is. It kind of feels like he might just be Oswaldo Cabrera's replacement at this point. Because when we first got him, I was like, okay, he's going to be Alex Verdugo's replacement. But Verdugo has like kind of woken up a little bit at the plate, and he's been holding it down in left field. And then it's like, okay, I guess he's going to be DJ LeMahieu's replacement. But I think that. I think the Ben Rice is kind of he kind of needed a break because he kind of stopped hitting the ball, so they kind of had to play DJ at first. So they were kind of just like all right, we're just gonna put you at third base because that's where that's where we need you. And I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve on the on learning a new position for him. But yeah, no, I think this was a just a great just a great acquisition for the Yankees. I still think they should have done a little bit more, but definitely satisfied with the return on this investment so far. And then just to recap, they gave up. They gave up Augustin Ramirez, who was their number 20 prospect. Jared Cierna, their number 19 prospect, and then Abraham Ramirez. So they didn't exactly, break the bank or overpay for him or anything. And he does play with a lot of I think a big thing too is he does play with like a lot of he has like that swagger to him and plays with a lot of energy. And that's kind of something that the Yankees were missing too. The lineup, it just seemed like they were kind of lifeless for a little while. And he just kind of came in and just provided like an instant spark. So hopefully he keeps that going, and it makes the and hopefully it continues to make the Yankees lineup a much more formidable one now at full strength with the addition of him than it was before.
I feel like you kind of had a couple of phrases there that kind of adequately fit what he is. And people debate of, is he really a superstar? Is he, just because he's the show cover athlete, is he really that good? And it's, whether that's true or not, I don't know if that necessarily pertains to what the Yankees need right now. And you talked about his skill set, and we've seen the power showcased so far early on. And another guy that's going to benefit from being a left-handed hitter at Yankee Stadium. You mentioned the speed, the ability to play multiple positions, and just the overall way he carries himself. If anything, I think he's almost feels like a jumper cable to the Yankee lineup right now, where it's now you don't want to have to consistently keep putting the jumper cable on your battery. You probably need to get that thing checked out. And I think if you had a more complete team where you knew, like, okay, this is our second baseman, this is our, you have Judge in center and Soto in right. It's like, okay, here's our left fielder. We've got that taken care of. I think if your lineup was a little more stable, Jazz Chisholm would almost be like rounding it off. Be like, okay, and to top it all off, we went and got Jazz Chisholm. Like, he would be the perfect accessory to a well-built team. For the struggles that you guys have had, I think he is the perfect antidote to whatever's been troubling you. He's a guy that can hit 20 to 25 home runs, can steal 20 to 25 bases. Is he a great defender? By no means. Is he a liability? I wouldn't say that either. I don't know if he's as great as he's made out to be, but I certainly don't think he's as bad as some people want you to think he is. I think for what the Yankees have gone through, that's exactly the shot in the arm you need. That's the kind of guy that can get you playing again. Like, all right, yeah, we actually are all right. We are pretty good. Let's go win this. And I think especially winning a game like you guys did last night in extra innings and him being a huge part of that. And that's the kind of win that can get you going again, where you're like, okay, we can win these sort of games. We remember how to win these sort of games. And I'm sure Jazz Chisholm has to be thrilled to be on a team like this. I know he made the playoffs last year with the Marlins, but having the spotlight like this.
Oh, yeah.
He's certainly going to have it the rest of the way, good and bad. I mean, I'm sure that's going to do a world for him to be in this kind of spot where it's like, okay, I'm on a team that's actively trying to win something, and people care if we win or lose, because Marlins fans were happy to make the playoffs last year. It didn't matter what happened. I think for Jazz Chisholm, there's stakes now for him that there haven't been before. And I do kind of have to salute, and I feel like you did kind of allude to it there at the end. Chisholm does play with a style and an attitude that can piss a lot of the fan base off. And as someone who roots for Francisco Lindor, I fully understand it, and I salute those guys. And I feel like you do too. So just knowing that, like, if Jazz does anything well, there's going to be the part of the fan base, and they're probably out on Long Island, probably been like, they let a blue hair guy play for the Yankees. What happened to the game I love? Knowing that those people are pissed off makes it even better, I imagine.
Yeah, they definitely have. They definitely alienated a lot of the Long Island sector of Yankee Twitter. So uh, keeping Long Island pissed off is also definitely a positive. Usually if you're making I'm saying this as a native Long Islander, but usually if you are making people on Long Island mad and they are not agreeing with what you're doing, then you're probably doing something right.
They
So
probably thought Brett Gardner would have been a good deadline addition. Like,
yeah,
talking about a guy that was just doing it right.
yeah. Like I'm surprised I didn't see more chatter of like when all these rumors were floating around about the Yankees trying to be like the all reunion team. I'm surprised no one like floated Brett Gardner's name out there. Like he just played the game the right way. There's just I don't know. There's something about him I just trust.
What do you mean by that?
But yeah, so I mean, yeah, overall, I do still wish they maybe would have gotten like one more bat. Like I would have loved that they would have went and got like a Ryan McMahon from the Rockies or someone like that. But yeah, I guess I guess they either weren't interested in moving him or the asking price was just a little too high because I mean a lot of teams, and this will kind of segue into the next topic, but a lot of the teams, especially like a lot of the bottom feeding teams, they didn't. It was a seller's market, and they didn't really sell as hard as you would think. Looking at the Rockies and the White Sox.
I mean, the White Sox tried at least.
Yeah, they did try. But I think overall, not trading, not getting something for Luis Robert, I think that's a pretty massive L for them. I also think that not getting something for Crochet to a lesser extent, but I also think that was kind of an L for them. And as far as like as far as giving up Eric Fetty, I don't. The return. I feel like the return on that was a little bit underwhelming for them, and also the return that they got for Eloy Jimenez as well. Although you really couldn't expect to get that much for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, to not really get a whole lot for Eric Fetty. That's kind of where I feel like they dropped the ball there, and I feel like they dropped the ball in not being able to unload Luis Robert, because I feel like right now is you're kind of at that point where they're kind of at that point where they kind of have to make a decision as to like whether or not he's part of their future. And I just think that they probably just would have been better off if they if they would have sold, and if they would have sold him off and replenished their prospect pool.
The Fetty one is surprising to me because not only was he having a good year, but for teams that might be interested, you've got another year of team control, and he's also cheap for next year too. I don't think he's more than $5 or $6 million. So you would have a known quantity. Then that Fetty's had a good year. You would have him for next year, and he wouldn't cost you all that much. So you would think a team that, hey, we need one more starting pitcher to get us where we need to go. All right, we'll cough up a little bit more because we're going to get a good product on the cheap, and we're going to maintain at least some semblance of team control for next year. And especially with the deal that went down, like everybody's fleeced the Cardinals in deals lately. Like,
Yeah.
he's got somebody out of that. The Nationals got Lane Thomas. I know he moved on. The Rangers got Adolis Garcia. I feel like I'm missing 2 or 3 other teams where they just absolutely swindled the Cardinals. I feel like the White Sox should have been able to get in on that.
Yeah, and it is kind of weird that the Cardinals have been the team as of late that's been getting fleeced by other organizations, because like for pretty much all of my life it was always like the Cardinals are like the model of stability and like the model of like competency in baseball. they always, they always get good returns, and they always have a great prospect pool, and they always are pulling these players out of their ass. They're always great with like, the scouting and development of their farm system. And now, like, they're kind of, they're kind of getting robbed left and right.
And their free agency signings usually hit. Like they very rarely had a bad contract.
Yeah, and even those as of late have been like kind of not as they're not making like moves that are as savvy as maybe they used to. Like, yeah, Nolan Arenado is great. I still love Nolan Arenado. And Paul Goldschmidt too, but you could see now that like Paul Goldschmidt's like clearly, he's clearly now on the back end of his career.
Well, that one you live with because you got like 4 or 5 really good years out of him. So and you got an MVP. So if it's like,
yeah, you did get an MVP
37
season
and he declines a little bit, well, that's just going to happen. But it's been like they gave out huge money to Steven Matz.
Yeah,
let me tell you all about that.
Yeah, that was a disaster.
Yeah, did not go well. I know they've paid for closers. That didn't go well. I think they brought Lance Lynn back. That did not go well. They've had some misses.
Oh yeah, no,
and just the fact that they've been trading their whole farm system away.
Yeah, they're kind of in this weird. They've kind of been in this weird spot for a few years now, where they're kind of like the tweener team. Like they're not, like you could kind of make a case for it either way. Like you could kind of make a case for them to be a team that should be, contending and like going all in to contend. While you kind of have the last, while you have like the last of like Arenado and Goldschmidt's careers. But then there's also the side of it where, you could definitely make a case that, that in a weak NL Central division, with aging star players, that they'd be better off selling. And they kind of have been taking like a bit of like a 1 foot in, 1 foot out approach. Like they're more so buying than selling, but in the process, they haven't really made that like savvy move. It's kind of like they're overpaying for mid, and they're giving up really good prospects in the process, and kind of they're kind of handing other teams World Series. I mean, shit, they traded Adolis Garcia to the Rangers, and he was the World Series MVP. So
I forgot they traded Sandy Alcantara and Zach Gallen for 1 year of Marcell Ozuna.
Oh man, and that was when he famously tried to climb that fence.
Sure did. Sure did. That would have been their one. I pulled this up. That would have been their 1-2 right now if they just had never traded anybody, and the rest of their rotation would have been Marco Gonzalez, Austin Gomber, Luke Weaver. Their lineup would have been Harrison Bader, Adolis Garcia, Randy Arozarena across the outfield. Lane Thomas as your DH, Patrick Wisdom at third, Luke Voigt at first, Carson Kelly catching, Aledmus Diaz at short, and Elharis Montero at second. Or they could bring in Edmundo Sosa to play at second if they needed to, or short.
Yeah.
They just made no deals.
Yeah, they just stood pat. But I feel like it's like they kind of got in their own head, or they're like, no, we're the Cardinals, and we always have to be the smartest man in the room, and like we know more than you do, and we're gonna build this team the right way, whatever that means, and we got the best fans in baseball, so we got to we got to show them how smart we are. And
by the way, what is the common denominator of the Cardinals and White Sox? Tony La Russa.
Interesting.
So it needs to be the smartest in the room. Where did they get that from?
Yeah, all roads lead back to Rome, I guess. Yeah. So I mean, I would say that the Cardinals trade deadline, I would chalk that up as an L, even though. Even though they did get Eric Fetty, and in a very weak division with a pretty wide open, race for the wild card, and basically 4 playoff spots like pretty much available for the pickings for them. That might be all they need to sneak into the playoffs.
And they're still 5 back of the Brewers in the Central, and
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Brewers going forward. You lose your best bat in Yelich, and he's kind of been a driving force for their lineup. Obviously, the Brewers are always going to have good pitching. That's just what they're built on. But that was a Milwaukee lineup that really had to fight to score, even with Yelich being healthy and productive. And now there's no real timetable for when you're going to get him back. That could kind of throw a wrench into all that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it kind of sounds like it kind of sounds like Yelich is probably, they haven't come out and said it yet, but I would say there's a pretty solid chance he's going to be done for the year. But also with the Cardinals too, I mean, it's like how much did they really improve? Like when you consider that their run differential is -35, like how much better did they really get?
And what would they consider the source of that to be? Do we have a -35 run differential because we don't have enough pitching, or are we not hitting?
Yes.
As the best bat they got was Tommy Pham, which, okay, a major league starting caliber bat. I don't disagree. Is he going to solely turn that around for you? Probably not.
Yeah. It seems like they're kind of taking that whole approach, like they're kind of taking the like family reunion approach to an extent, like bringing back Pham, bringing back Lance Lynn. You should be moving forwards, not backwards. But we'll see how that works out for them. I'm sure with their luck, they'll probably like squeak out a wild card spot, or the Brewers will go on like an epic, the Brewers will collapse epically and the Cardinals will somehow steal that division. But yeah, I would say
some guy that we don't even know right now is going to hit 600 for September.
Yeah, that's coming. Maybe we'll have a Jordan Walker resurgence.
It's possible.
I remember like when he first came up like last year, like I think he had like a really good spring training, and I was like, all right, like this guy's gonna win NL Rookie of the Year. Like I'm betting on it now. There's just no, like it's just done. Cardinals guy, like he's gonna win Rookie of the Year, and then like 2 months later he got DFA'd, and kind of haven't really heard much about him ever since. But September call-ups are a month away, so you never know. It could be him, or it could be someone who we don't even know exists. The ghost of Oscar Taveras might come up and make some noise. So we'll see what they do. I would say a winner from the deadline. To me, I would say the Toronto Blue Jays from a selling standpoint are winners. I thought that the Pirates maybe overpaid a little bit for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. I understand the move from their perspective. You're getting a bat in your lineup that is an upgrade over what you have with like Jared Triolo, and you're getting a guy who can play 8 positions. I just don't know, and maybe I'm a little high on Charles McAdoo, the guy they gave up for him, but I just think that his ceiling, Charles McAdoo, I think his ceiling's a little bit too high to give up for like an average at best utility player. And I think the Pirates were winners at the deadline too. I'm not saying that to say that they were losers. I'm just saying that between that trade and between what they also got for Yusei Kikuchi, I think that they, I think they made out really well, and they were able to kind of replenish their farm system, and they were able to hold on to like their blue chip players like Bichette and Vlad Guerrero Jr. So I think give it another year or two, I think the Blue Jays could definitely be a problem again.
And I looked through that Kikuchi return, and wow, the Blue Jays got the kid of a former great baseball player.
Yep.
What would give them that idea? No, but I mean to have a guy that gave you 11 starts this year and was perfectly average, and to get La Perfido, who's been up and been okay so far. And again, and not every rookie is going to come in and blow the doors off immediately. So there's potentially still a really good bat in there and just, need seasoning. I mean, Will Wagner's already a top 15 prospect for them. And Jake Bloss is someone who actually had gotten a little bit of major league experience earlier this year. I think if you trust your pitching lab or your pitching coaching, through your system, like, okay, maybe we just got to send him to AAA for a little bit. This is a lost year anyway. Or, hey, we're just going to let this kid work through it. We have nothing to play for right now. Let this kid go through it. If he takes his bumps right now, we'll be all right. He might be someone that we can pair with Gossman down the line and with Barrios. Again, for what you were giving up, like, if the 25 Blue Jays are going to be a team that's back in the playoff mix next year, I don't think, one, Yusei Kikuchi was going to be a reason for it. Two, I'm not even sure he would have been there. So to do that and then get what could potentially be significant value for that, pretty good.
2 top 15 prospects. Yeah. No, I think they made out like bandits. Say they got really they got for IKF, who's average at best, and Kikuchi, who's also average at best. They got they got 3 top 15 prospects like from the other teams. Like Jake Bloss was the number 9 prospect for the Astros. Will Wagner, shout outs to my boy, number 13. And then I believe Charles McAdoo was like the 14th ranked prospect in the Pirates system. So they definitely got like some, higher end talent. Now we'll see like how that translates. Like maybe we'll never hear Charles McAdoo's name again. I don't know. Maybe Will Wagner is just Billy Wagner's son. And we'll see what Jake Bloss amounts to. But and they also got a rookie outfielder in Joey Loperfido. So, I'd say they got like a lot of quantity that could definitely turn into, some pretty high quality players. Like I would say if even like 1 or 2 of those players like really hit, like if Bloss becomes like a solid, every 5th day starter, you can count on him to give you a solid outing.
Yeah.
And, even if, and even if like Will Wagner turns into like an everyday starter, or even if he kind of fills like the IKF role, I would say that's
value.
You consider that a win as the Astros. So I think they did really well at the deadline.
All told, for a guy that wasn't going to be a long-term part of your team anyway.
Exactly. I think that I would say it's hard to say that it's hard to say the Rays did not win at this deadline. They pretty much they unloaded, and pretty much everyone that they said they were going to unload, they unloaded, and I think they got I think that they got pretty good value in return for Arozarena as well as Isaac Paredes. I mean, especially when you look at the Isaac Paredes trade, I mean, they got Christopher Morel and 2 prospects. So you replenished your farm system, and you got like a major league ready starter. And now Christopher Morel might have some things he needs to figure out as far as, as far as his hitting goes. And, he was supposed to be like a Pete Alonso type of like master. And, he hasn't really lived up to that yet.
Like they thought he could be a 30-30 type, because the type that could go out and steal bases had a pretty good clip too. Although,
so
gotten off to a nice start in Tampa.
Yeah, no, that's true. He's gotten off to a nice start with them. And they also get the prospects. They also get the prospects on top of it. And then with the Arozarena deal, who I spent that whole podcast last week, spent that whole podcast talking about why he would be perfect for the Yankees, and then before I could even drop it, before I could even drop the episode, he was traded. So real cool of the Rays to not wait for us, but
the jerk store called.
Yeah, but you live and you learn, I guess, as far as that goes. But yeah, I would say Yeah, I would say the Rays got a ton of good value for for the assets that they parted ways with.
I know the initial reaction, and I'm guilty of this, was when I first saw the return for Rosarena. I thought that's it, and I know Seattle's got some prospects that they haven't brought up yet, or guys that they just brought up, and I mean I know they've developed pitching pretty well. I just remember thinking those are guys that are probably still 2 years off, or guys that weren't even necessarily top 5 guys for Seattle. And again, I realize that Rosarena hasn't had the greatest year, but even still, that's all they could get. And then when you realize, like, what is the Rays' best skill? Player development.
Yep.
Like they do it solely on the backs of guys that came through their system or guys that they acquired and built them up that way. That's how you do it. I mean, people always forget, we always talk about, the Cardinals traded a Rosarena. When that happened, it was for Matthew Liberatore, and he was the bigger prospect in that deal. That was the Matthew Liberatore trade initially, because he was this, well-known lefty prospect for about 3 or 4 years. And when he went to the Cardinals, it was, oh, wow, the Rays moved on from him. That's interesting. No one thought, like, a Randy Rosarena, I think, had just came up. I think it was 2019 he had just made his debut. And then that offseason, they traded him. Nobody was thinking about him. No one was like, wow, that's a great get for the Rays. But they consistently do this. They're able to see something in someone else's system, or they're able to see something that other teams won't see, or, like they were able to swindle the Pirates for, in the Chris Archer trade. And then they turned around and they hit the eject button on Austin Meadows at the exact moment that they were supposed to. And they got Paredes out of that. And now they're going to get all of this for trading Paredes. Like, this is what they do. So even for the myriad of deals that the Rays made here in the past week, if you ever felt a little apprehensive about what they're getting back, I think you just have to look at it from a perspective of, well, what are they seeing? Because more often than not, they're right with this.
Yeah, no, they're a team that definitely, like, while on the surface their moves may look questionable or the returns may look underwhelming, they are a team that, and listen, I don't like the Rays, but they're a team that deserves respect in that regard, and a team that deserves the benefit of the doubt when it comes to that. Because, I mean, they've kind of proven time and time again that they know just when to make these moves. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, Christopher Morel gets traded from the Cubs to the Rays, and all of a sudden he starts hitting the ball again and starts, like, kind of looking like the player that, they had hoped that he would be in Chicago. So, yeah, that whatever they're cooking there, it's working, and it's been working. And, I don't think it'll be long before, I don't think it'll be long before the Rays are, back in the mix. Like, obviously it's probably not going to happen this year, but, like, looking ahead to, and that's why part of me is like, oh, we better get this whole thing done now, because the AL East next year has the potential to be an absolute shit show.
Yeah, because the Rays are, soon enough they'll call up Junior Caminero. We'll see him. We'll see Carson Williams, Xavier Isaac, Braden Taylor. Like, this is just what they do.
Yeah, it's
like,
kind of,
how are they ever gonna replace Willie Adames? That's a guy you could count on.
Yeah, like,
and then they brought up someone. I don't know what happened to his replacement, but yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of funny in a way, like, so we were talking before about, like, how the Dodgers, were making, a big market team with all the resources in the world. They're making all these big moves, or, like, they'll trade away, like, these big prospects who will go on to, like, do great things, like Yordan Alvarez. And, they don't really bat an eye. The Rays, it's like they're kind of doing the same thing, but, like, on a much smaller scale with far less resources. Because, I mean, they handed Wander Franco, who obviously he deserves nothing. He got exactly what he deserved for what he did, but, they hand Wander Franco that big contract. Somehow it worked out for them that this all happened before that contract even kicked in, so it was essentially voided. And, but, like, Wander Franco was supposed to be, like, like, the guy. and like they kind of just, to no fault of their own, obviously, like, what
Yeah.
happens, what happened. It's not like, that's not like their fault, but like, they got, they got the bad luck of like losing that type of blue chip, like type of player. And it really just didn't, at least not in the long run, it really didn't affect them. It's kind of like, the wheels just keep turning and it's just kind of like business as usual for them.
I mean, I kind of do have to salute the Rays that in spite of all that, I mean, their season took a turn last year after that. And I mean, and how could it not?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's completely understandable that, they kind of went out with a whimper in the playoffs. Obviously, that, like, not only to have that being around your team, but then it also is a guy that, was supposed to be your engine. And now not only is he not there, but it's not there because of something heinous. Like, I get it, but credit to them. I mean, I know they're having a middling year by their recent standards. They're 2 games above 500, but to even be in this position, given all of that going around, is a credit to those players. It's a credit to Kevin Cash. It's a credit to the front office that they've been able to keep this thing rolling where, if all of that just tanked this year for them, I think most people would have looked around and went, well, yeah, the guy that's supposed to be there and leading his team's in jail.
Yeah.
What can you really do? And, whether or not they get there this year, who knows? But to even still be chugging along at this rate, I have to respect it.
Yeah, it would really be something if they, like, they're only 4.5 games out of the last wild card spot. It would really be something if they just kind of continued to win games and just like kind of made the playoffs by accident. I'm not necessarily expecting it because I do think that the Royals are very good, and if they falter, the Red Sox and the Astros are there, and like, granted, like, so with the Rays, it's like, all right, there's only like a couple of teams they need to overcome, but I think with the Astros, like, you kind of trust their track record, and if the Royals do like fall off a cliff, you would trust them to find a way to get in there. And I mean, the Red Sox, like, Alex Cora is a good manager, and they've been, they've been playing pretty good ball all year and just kind of finding ways to win games. So, I wouldn't be shocked if they got in either. But yeah,
And they've got Casas coming back soon.
Yeah, they do. So I mean, so the Rays only have a couple of teams to like climb over, but like I'd say that the teams that they do have to climb over, it's like a pretty tall order. But I do have a hot take that I'm going to drop on this podcast right now. In 2025, every single AL East team will make the playoffs.
Ooh. So it'll be a strictly, so they'll take all three well, it would be three all 3 wild cards would go to the AL then.
Yeah, or actually, I guess it's not possible for every team.
4 out of 5, which would still be pretty impressive.
All the wild card teams will be AL East teams.
Ooh.
Yeah, and
well,
at this point,
that's possible with Tampa because they should get McClanahan back next year. They just got Jeffrey Springs back this week. He'll be properly stretched out next year. Quiet as it's kept, Taj Bradley, I was bullish on him in dynasty leagues last year, and I may have just been a year early because this year, Taj Bradley, this was the guy we thought he was going to be last year. He's gotten over the walks. The strikeout rates are still there. The command's a lot better. And I think he's got an ERA, like, it's dropping into the 2s over the past 3 weeks. So, all of a sudden he looks like a frontline guy. McClanahan's a frontline guy. Springs is a solid number 3, provided you can avoid injuries elsewhere. And I would have to think Junior Caminero comes up at some point between now and the end of the year, just because the hole that Paredes leaves by leaving, like that should help. And they didn't trade Yandy Diaz at the deadline, which was rumored, but that does make me think he probably moves in the offseason. So we'll probably see Junior Caminero, if not this year, then definitely in 25. And we've been hearing his name for a solid 2-3 years now as one of the best hitters at any level of baseball. So that'll be a help to their lineup. Maybe we see Xavier Isaac, who is one of the best power bats in the minor leagues, come up. Carson Williams is supposed to be a 5-tool shortstop. Braden Taylor could play third, could play second, could play short. all of a sudden, yeah, that doesn't seem so crazy for the Rays to be in there. We know the Yankees will be there.
Yeah, Orioles should be there, and then you could definitely see. I think you could definitely see the Blue Jays and Red Sox kind of like fighting for that last spot.
And Boston should have at least one of Marcelo Meyer and Roman Anthony there next year, if not both.
Yep.
And you figure at least one of the two will hit.
Yeah, and even with the Red Sox too, Bryson Bello, I thought like last year, I thought he was going to be like really good, and he's kind of been having a down year, but like he could bounce back. So
they found Houck.
Yep, they found Tanner Houck. I think it'll probably be. I mean, I think the AL East is usually one of the more competitive divisions in baseball, but yeah, I could definitely see it being like an absolute gauntlet next year.
And as we talked about in the last episode, will be interesting to see what the Orioles do now that they have new owners, and we presume they're going to spend in a way that the Angeloses didn't.
Yep.
That first big test is whether they keep Corbin Burns or not. I would have to think you don't make a statement move like that with that being your first move as an owner. And I think that, that's Cohen traded for Lindor and made sure he got paid. Because you can't do that immediately
that's your
and let him get out the door.
Yeah.
And then so who else are they going to go after? Are they going to spend more? They go out and get another starter to pair with, because they were linked with Skubal. They went out and got Trevor Rogers, and I know I'm missing someone else. I think they might have gotten A's starter from Philly. I could be wrong on that. But, Baltimore clearly needs it. Means is done for the year. Bradish is probably going to miss most of next year, and their window's right now. So,
yep.
And we know Toronto will spend. We've seen them do it. They paid Gossman. They paid Robbie Ray. They didn't pay Robbie Ray. They got him in a deal. But they've paid Bichette and Vlad. They threw money at Springer. So Toronto's not afraid to do it either.
Yeah, Canada's team is not afraid to open up the checkbook. They really never really have been afraid to do that. As far as how it's worked out. Yeah. And I don't know if you mentioned it, but I think, they got Zach Eflin from the Rays.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of in-division AL East.
And they got,
I'm surprised.
Yeah. And they got Sir Anthony Dominguez in that Phillies trade.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. Hayes. So I mean, I would say, I would say you could say the Orioles were definitely winners at the deadline too. But if we don't have any more winners or losers to talk about at this trade deadline, we can move on to our final topic. So we were talking about this.
I do want to give one more because this was one of the funnier things I've read over the week.
Sure.
And this has to do with the Padres trading half of their top 12 prospects for relievers. And this is from Foolish Baseball. The Padres really emptied the farm for this one. You fool. You insipid little cretin. They will never run out of prospects. They are the San Diego Padres. You cannot stop A.J. Preller from cultivating young talent and trading it away. He has unlimited chips at the poker table.
Yeah. I don't know. The Padres it's so weird that they keep doing this, especially like when they traded Soto away because like they're like cash poor and like know that they're not going to be able to afford him. So like I don't know like exactly what the plan is there, but like what do they really have unlimited chips at the poker table? Like I feel like eventually they're going to run out of these moves to make, and they're going to not have money to obviously they have Machado still under contract for a while, but aside from that, I feel like eventually it's, and obviously they signed the Fernando Tatis Jr. to a pretty massive deal too. But like aside from that, if you're already having like cash flow problems to where you can't pay Juan Soto, like a 25-year-old player in their prime and like a top 5 player in all of baseball, then what really is the plan here? Are you kind of just hoping that like you catch lightning in a bottle or like fall into a World Series before then? I don't know. I think that's like a pretty tall order, especially like when you're in the NL West and you're competing with the Dodgers every year, who have even more resources than you do. So, I just don't really see it working out for them. I feel like eventually, they're gonna they're gonna lose the players that they went out and acquired, and then they're gonna have a depleted farm system eventually. So,
Well, I think for them, you have to remember their owner died during the offseason last year. And I think that was even after the reports came out about that they couldn't afford Soto and they were having these cash issues. So now you have the uncertainty of, is it going to stay in the family? Are they actively trying to move it on to someone else? Is that next owner going to be as spending happy, or are they going to be spending averse? Because if he's spending averse, you're going to start moving some of these guys. So I almost wonder if this, and we know AJ Preller is not afraid to make a trade, but I almost wonder if they're looking at it like this might be the last year that we get where we legitimately have a roster that's going for it and we've got the talent to do it. They could strip this all down in the winter. We could lose everyone, and then we're back to square one. So, all right, we're going to go get the two best bullpen arms available. If we got to trade 6 prospects, screw it. We develop talent. This is what we've been doing for a decade. Might as well.
Yeah, maybe they just figure we're gonna go for it, and if everything goes to shit, it'll just be someone else's problem. Definitely, it seems like a lot of uncertainty around that organization right now, which I think is a great segue into the last topic we got lined up for you tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about the some of the most doomed organizations in baseball. So these are teams that are doomed either from a standpoint of there's really no competing in sight for them. Stadium issues could be included too. Maybe some of these teams don't really know where their home's going to be in the coming years. Obviously there is a certain team that is, going to be moving after this year, and there's a whole lot up in the air with that. And then there's other teams where stadium, they might only have like a few years left in their current stadium before they have to either get the funding to build a new one, or they have to explore relocation. So let's get into it. The most doomed MLB organizations right now, I would say, coming in at number 1. I mean, how could you not say the Oakland Athletics?
I mean, because it doesn't seem like Vegas really is all that enthralled. It's almost,
it doesn't seem like it's set in stone. Like
it's like you've got a party and your one friend is like, "Hey, can I bring such and such?" And you don't really know this person well enough to be like, I mean, I guess sure. That's kind of how Vegas feels with the A's. It's like, yeah, we've got the Raiders, we've got the Knights, we've got the Aces. I mean, sure, bring something, I guess.
Yeah, like I guess we'll try and figure something out, but it doesn't seem like it's like it doesn't seem like it's super high priority for them, especially because they have they had like a pretty world famous like hotel and casino closed down pretty recently too. So who knows what their thoughts are. And I mean, they got their hands full with the Spear now. There's so much other shit going on. It's like, is a baseball team that's been utterly bad for the better part of like the last decade or so. Is that really gonna be like something that we're like gonna invest our marbles into? It's like the A's need Vegas way more than Vegas needs the A's.
I think that's the best way to put it.
I think that's part of it. And honestly, it's a disgrace they're even leaving Oakland. Like the owner, the ownership just overall terrible job. I think that I think the city of Oakland is a little bit to blame for that situation too. But ultimately, I feel like most of the blame falls on the ownership. There's really no like it really doesn't seem like there's like really much of like a plan in place. I mean, we talked before about how the Mets pretty much gave up peanuts for Paul Blackburn. Not that you were ever going to give up much for him, but like, and I understand that like Mason Miller is still like, pretty early in his career. Like he's still
Also
considered.
injured.
Yeah, he's also injured. Maybe that's part of why he didn't get traded, or, maybe like they just were, maybe like they were just, they're asking for more than teams were willing to give up. But it just doesn't seem like, the like number one, the path to them getting to Vegas does not seem very clear. It seems like there's gonna like ultimately, I think they're gonna make it happen, because I think there's enough money in an MLB team that I think Vegas eventually will be like, all right, like we got room for a stadium, like we'll get something done here, and there's going to be a sense of urgency, obviously, on the A side to get that done, but it just seems like there's so many hurdles that they have to clear there. They're going to be playing in a minor league stadium that holds like 7,000 fans for the foreseeable future, probably at least the next 2 or 3 years, maybe longer, depending how long it takes for them to get the Vegas situation completely solidified.
And I don't know if you saw this, but there was a fan at an A's game recently had a sign that said, "Today's high in Oakland, 78. Today's high in Sacramento, where they're going to be playing, 103. Today's high in Las Vegas, 115." Like,
yeah,
what sense? And on the, I think underneath it's like, what sense does any of this make?
Yeah,
that's a minor league park in Sacramento. You're not just throwing a retractable roof over that thing.
No, you're not. Especially if like you don't have the like if you don't have the money right now to, whether it's you don't have the money or you're not willing to spend it, either way, you're not even fielding a remotely competitive team right now. And I give those players on the A's a lot of credit. Like they do play hard.
Yeah, what the White Sox are, the A's should be, and yet they're like at least respectably bad.
Yeah. So they do play hard. Like I think they take pride in, the city of Oakland, and I think they take pride in the fact that, that they have very loyal fans, even though, not many of them are showing up to the game. And, it's also hard to blame them for not showing up to the games. Cause I mean, like,
for who? For what?
Yeah. For what, for who, for why. But there also just doesn't really seem to be a clear-cut path to competing, even when they get to Vegas or wherever eventually. It doesn't seem like they're not a team that seems like, oh yeah, they suck now, but like they got this great farm system. In a few years, they're going to be good. Like when they get to Vegas, they're going to hit the ground running. It just
and
doesn't.
Is this owner even going to spend? Like that's
yeah. Even when he gets there, is he going to invest into the on the field product? Or like, I mean, the stadium will have to have a retractable roof if you are moving to Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way you can't. And, and then like, is he going to really invest in the on the field product, or is he going to get wrapped up in like other Vegas stuff, So there's a lot of questions there that, the pathway to this team, like being competitive and having a permanent home, there's so many question marks.
Yeah, because at least like the Raiders try, they just can't get out of their own way. Like they've tried to be like, all right, well, we're not just here just to be an attraction. Like we're trying to win. You can question the ways that they go about it, but they try. The Knights knew that. They always talk about one of the reasons why the Knights were so good right away was they knew, all right, once we're here, other teams are going to start to follow. If we're not good within 3 to 4 years, by the time those other teams come, we've lost our advantage. As long as people are showing up, we're going to get gate money. We're going to get all of the concession money. We'll have that money to play with. We have to keep them hooked. If we're good right out of the gate, people will stay. And they have. And now that's
and the expansion to an extent, the expansion draft does make it like easier to do that too.
And they did, and part of that's on the league, because I think the league realized, hey, it's probably not good if it takes the expansion teams like a decade to make the playoffs like we did the last couple of times. Like we probably want them to be better right out of the gate.
Yeah.
But even with the Raiders there now and the A's coming, like that feels like a Knights town more than anything. Like they're
I would
people
say
that aren't just transplants or whatever, but the people that are of Las Vegas love the
like
Knights.
Yeah, like
They
the
try.
Knights are like their team. Like if you ask like the native Vegaser, like they probably feel the most connection. Like the native Las Vegas sports fan, they probably
Yeah.
feel the most connection to the Golden Knights because they were there first and it was like a homegrown team, whereas like they inherited the Raiders from Oakland and the A's from Oakland, and it probably just doesn't feel as much like this is our
Yeah.
team, and like they haven't been successful enough to really latch onto either. So yeah, there's just a lot of questions with the A's, and it's hard to really I don't really know what the future holds. But one thing I do know is that I will be at the last game at the Oakland Coliseum. Um, and that is something I'm very excited for.
That is going to be a scene.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see that. I'll definitely like put on my best, like pretend to be an A's fan face and try and represent that fan base well when I'm there. But yeah, I'll be at that last game / last series with a few of my friends. So yeah, they would definitely be number one. I would say right behind them is probably the Chicago White Sox, because they also have, like kind of like whatever their stadium's called now, U.S. Cellular Field, or I don't think that's what it's called anymore. But
Is it CenturyLink or I? Oh no, I think it's an insurance company. Hang on, I got time. But the common denominator in all of these teams that we're going to talk about, Chris, bad ownership.
Yeah, guaranteed.
If you got bad players, you can trade them, you can cut them. You have a bad manager, you fire him. You have a bad GM, you can fire him.
Yeah, you can't fire.
And I speak from experience.
Owner.
If you have a bad owner, good luck.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Illinois Sports Facilities Authority cannot fire themselves.
Guaranteed rate field. That's what.
Yeah, guaranteed rate.
Yeah.
So that stadium has not aged particularly great, and it was built in 1991. So it's about almost 35 years old now. Like they probably have another maybe 5 years there tops. I mean, it's Chicago. I think they'll get something done eventually for a new stadium. I don't see them like relocating or anything like that, but that's still like up. That's still up in the air.
The Bears are going to do it. It looks like.
Yeah. I mean, there are rumors of that, but the Bears, it's like what they might move to like a suburb or something like that, in Illinois. Yeah, so maybe the White Sox do something similar, which I don't know. I don't really like when teams like do that, like the Braves move to like a suburb of like Atlanta, and it's like I don't know. The Braves are like hardly even Atlanta's team anymore.
Yeah, what did they mean by they needed to get closer to their base?
Well, if you look at bases on a baseball field, what color are they?
But like to know that Andrew Benintendi is the largest contract the White Sox have ever given out.
Yeah. Oof.
I mean, and it really all stems back to that they made the playoffs in 2020, and it was like, okay, they have Jimenez, they have Robert, they have, Tim Anderson hadn't fallen off the cliff yet. Yohan Moncada was still pretty good. Jose Abreu, I think, had just won an MVP. It was like, okay, there's something of a core here. It's like, I don't know what their ceiling is, but like, hey, this is a good position to be in. And whatever misgivings we have about managers now, and then, we debate the manager's role and all that, but clearly they played hard enough in what is a very tough year in 2020. But the White Sox were legitimately good in those 60 games. And they fired Rick Renteria, who they clearly liked and played hard and well for, to bring Tony La Russa back. And I feel like that is the zero event for everything that's followed since.
Yeah, and you knew it was over for the guy too when there was that video. I think it was like within the last year or two. It was either last year or the year before that, but there was that video where like the fan is like yelling at Tony La Russa and like
Yeah.
telling him what to do. He's like, "Oh yeah, pinch run for this guy right now," and he's
Yeah.
like, and La Russa's like, "Who?" And he's like, "Put in this guy." And he's like, "All right," and then he like goes and makes the move. It's like, all right, like when the fan is literally doing your job better than you are, like
Yeah.
you're cooked. But he is a very important baseball guy, as he told the police officer when he was driving drunk.
And then his wonderful reciting of the alphabet afterwards, which is will never leave my brain. RSTVY
STLCARD
But then
CHI.
and it's a lot of like getting high on their own supply, like we talked about the La Russa thing, but okay, well, we're gonna get rid of Kenny Williams and Rick Hahn. We got to go somewhere else. And they just hired a guy that was already in their organization and had played for them. So you're not even really taking a fresh approach. If you bring in a front office that doesn't work, like, hey, plenty of teams do that. But you had been doing something. You had Kenny Williams, who was the GM forever. And then when you moved him upstairs, you brought in Rick Hahn, who had been his number one guy. And so now, like, oh, well, we're going to get rid of that way. We're going to try something else. Well, did you really? Because you're bringing in a guy that those guys signed to play for their team. So, like, all he knows is that system. And now he's going to implement it being the GM. And we see how that's going for them. Like, sometimes you just have to try stuff. It's like, well, all right, we're going to go with this. That didn't work. All right, we'll try this. All right, that didn't work. We're going to try. All right, that didn't work. But you have to be open to thinking that, all right, the things that we think are right aren't right.
Yeah, eventually you have to. Yeah, like when you're a team that does things your own way, and like this is how I always feel. Like this is how I feel being a Jets fan. It's like when you're a team that's like always doing things your own way, and it's always not working. Eventually, you have to take a step back and be like, okay, no, we're actually not smarter than anyone else. Why don't we just copy the teams that actually are having success?
Right.
And yeah, like certain teams, I don't know, like with the ownership, I don't know if it's an ego thing or a resource thing or maybe a little bit of both, but like they just won't, they just refuse to, they're just annoyingly stubborn and they refuse to like get out of that cycle. And if you're a fan of like a team like that, it can be a really frustrating cycle filled with endless amounts of pain and misery. So our hearts certainly go out to White Sox fans. It looks like they have until their lease, I think, expires for that for guaranteed rate US Cellular Field in 2028. So they do still have a few years left to figure something out, but they are, it does look like they might be, it does look like they could be, moving out of the Chicago area potentially, or, it's just, a lot of unknown there. So yeah, I would say that those are like probably, the top two. Number three, I would say, if you disagree, feel free to let me know, but I'd say number three would probably have to be the Rockies.
I tend to agree. And that's another thing where it all starts from the top. And I think the biggest thing is just that I don't know what they are. You trade Nolan Arenado and you pay, I think it was what, 30 or 40% of his contract. It was a well above zero amount. Like you would think you had just given Nolan Arenado this deal and it's, oh, well, we can't live with this. So they didn't even get that great of a haul back for him. I think that the two
it was pretty underwhelming.
Like Austin Gomber's probably the best piece they've gotten back for him, and he's a league average starter at best.
Yeah.
But they also didn't make St. Louis like, all right, here, you got to at least pay half of this. You're getting the better player here. You're getting one of the best defenders in the sport. You got to pay at least half of this. Didn't even get that.
Yeah, no, they.
And then a year later, they
all
paid
the money.
And then a year later, they give Chris Bryant, who was already declining at that point, an equal
massive
contract.
Deal. Yeah, like you could have just given Nolan Arenado that money, and it would have been
multiple years where it's like, okay, this guy's probably leaving. You're not top 5 pick bed, but you're not making the playoffs either. You should probably do like they did this with Trevor Story a couple years ago. Like we knew Trevor Story was going to get a big deal on the market. You might as well try to get something at least.
Yeah, especially since especially since you're not like contending that year. There's really no reason to hold on to him. They also like Coors Field is a very nice stadium. I've been there a couple of times and I like it a lot. But it is getting kind of old. It's it's pushing 30 now, so they might have to that's something they may have to explore in the pretty near future. And I would hope that they stay in Colorado.
I would hope that they just renovate Coors.
Yeah, or they could renovate Coors. I think Coors Field is a place that you don't have to like tear down and build a new place. I think you could get by with renovations. They may have even renovated it. I mean, I was there 2 months ago and it's not falling apart or anything. It's like a pretty nice, feels like a pretty modernized ballpark. It's not like it's not like the most modernized place, but it's also not like some dump that's outdated and falling apart. So yeah, they could definitely, I'm sure, renovate it. I think they actually did renovate. I think they renovated in 2023, actually.
Okay, good.
So they had their home solidified, but they're another team where it seems like there's no real pathway to competing again.
And here's the thing, like it is possible to compete. And I know people talk about, well, you're never going to get great pitching there. If we look at the back end of that last decade here for the Rockies, like Kyle Freeland, I want to say finished like top 4 in Cy Young voting. I know it didn't go well for him after that, but they turned Kyle Freeland into a legitimately great pitcher. It took them a while, but they turned John Gray into a good pitcher. They plucked German Marquez out of the Rays system. He just became the Rockies' all-time strikeout leader. They had something in place where, I mean, is pitching the first thing you're ever going to think of with the Rockies? Of course not. It's just not conducive to it. But you can get enough pitching to be good enough. The Rockies certainly have been able to develop lineups in multiple eras. They've been able to do this. So it is possible to build a contending team in Colorado. The biggest problem has been they just haven't been able to have like a 7-8 year run where, like the Astros are having that right now. The Dodgers are having that. The Braves had their 14-year run in the 90s. It always feels like
anytime they make it, it's kind of like a flash in the pan.
Yeah, it's a moment.
2007, 2007 was a moment, and then and then it was gone, and then like
17-18 they were there.
They were there, and then they got bounced in the wild card and they were gone again. So it just seems like they can't like string together like being consistently competitive, and it seems like they don't really have a plan to get there either. Like I think they're another team that could have done a lot more than they did, at the deadline to try and recoup some prospects and recoup some assets.
And like we said, they've spent money, so it's not that they don't do it.
Yeah, it's not that they don't have it. They just don't really spend it very wisely. And and I mean, like Chris Bryant, he pretty much said like right after, it didn't take him too long after he signed there to say that he regretted it. So, for a player that, has been a part of like a championship team and has had like an MVP? I don't know if he has an MVP. I don't know if I'd say he's like a Hall of Fame caliber player. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but he's definitely like a Hall of Very Good player, which
he had a Hall of Fame trajectory. Like to start.
Yeah.
He doesn't now, but
no, not anymore. But I would still put him in the Hall of pretty damn good. So, for that type of player who has been part of, a championship team and, has, knows what winning organizations look like, for him to say that, like, in the first year that he's there, that's kind of a pretty damning indictment on the organization and the leadership at up top.
Yeah, again, it's like, what kind of team do you want to be? Like, do we want to be a team where we're going to live on the strength of our hitting. And if we get pitching, great. Like the Rockies did that in the 90s. And, at least they were fun. Like those teams maybe didn't get to the playoffs, but it's like, okay, you knew what they
put
were.
asses in seats.
And also they were new. So I don't think that they had quite figured out how to master, like, all right, we're going to have to play at 5,280 feet. How are we going to make our pitching work? I think they had to do a lot of trial and error because, again, they had that stretch there at the end of the last decade where they had 3 legitimately good frontline pitchers. They enough to where they could go into a playoff series and have a shot. So they've somewhat figured out how to do this. The problem is just being able to consistently you're going to have to develop pitching prospects because it's not like, unless you wildly overpay like you did for Mike Hampton all those years ago, pitching free agents are not going to sign up to go there. So you have to draft pitching well, and then you got to develop well. And that's hard, especially because pitching's so volatile because of the health,
the altitude.
But like if you can do it, it's possible. You've seen what you can do and how far you can go when you develop it right. And those Rockies teams could hit. You had Arenado, you had Charlie Blackmon, you had late career Cargo. Like it can be done, and you can win. It'll never be easy because of the division you're in, because the Dodgers are always going to be there. But you can compete. It is not an impossible task, and it just feels like we're 6 different people with 6 different ideas right now, and that's never
like
good.
They're like, and it seems like they're like employing like a little bit of one of each 6 of each of the 6's ideas instead of like coming up with a plan, sticking to it, and doing it. Like, it seems like they just don't really have a much of a sense of direction there, and so they're another team that definitely seems the future seems bleak for them. So that's top 3, pretty consensus. I guess coming in at number 4, would you say it's the Miami Marlins at 4?
It feels like the easy call to make there, and they're in contention. I'm going to go with the Angels.
Yeah, the Angels are a good one. I figured they'd be on this list.
Mike Trout's the last prospect that they've developed that's really given them anything of any high value or at least all-star value at that level.
Yeah, and now
you have Ohtani. You never get close. At the times that they've spent money recently, like the Pujols contract, did not work out at all.
Anthony Rendon.
Anthony Rendon's.
Yeah.
Actually, I want to see if I can pull this up because I saw this today, which is pretty wild because he just went back on the IL, and this is an insane stat. I want to make sure I have this right. Since July 1st of last year, Anthony Rendon has not homered. Since May 18th, 2022, he has hit 2 home runs. They have paid him $110 million in that time.
$55 million per home run hit.
Incredible. The Josh Hamilton deal didn't work out. I mean, that was very much a disaster. You had the whole thing, the Tyler Skaggs thing, which is a separate issue unto itself. But if you're looking at on the field, I can't remember the last. Like Jared Weaver's probably the last. Well, not counting Ohtani. I always forget that part. But the last great out and out starting pitcher they had was probably Jared Weaver.
Yeah, and he was above average, I would say at best.
I mean, I think Joe Madden was there for maybe 2 years, and they had enough of that. I think Brett Ausmus was there for 1 year, which, talk to my Tiger friends, that was probably 1 year too many.
Yeah,
and they just bring Ron Washington back. Like, this just feels like an organization that just sees names, no matter where they are in their career, and they just throw money at it and
just hope something sticks.
Yeah, it just feels. It feels very much like what the Commanders were at the turn of the century. Like,
yeah.
Oh, people know you? Come on in.
Yeah, the Albert Hainsworths of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and part of it's on, part of it's definitely on them for for having that approach. But then there's also the aspect of, you're throwing money at players and then like a player just like stops giving a shit, like with like in the case of Anthony Rendon, like And it's like, how do you, as an organization, how do you really like, yeah, it looks bad on you to pay Anthony Rendon, and you're essentially paying him like 50, you're paying him almost $1/10 billion for every home run he hits. Like that looks bad on you no matter how you slice it. But like, as an organization, how do you really gauge, like, when you're making the decision, to sign like a high profile free agent, how do you really gauge like, like whether or not this guy is just going to like stop giving a fuck once he gets his money?
That just feels like due diligence. Like you check with people. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, like you can't really talk to the Nationals because it's like, well, I'm sure they were. I feel like they at least made an effort to try to bring him back, but I mean, that feels like something that's very easy to find. Where it's like, yeah, this dude's like just clearly playing for
the paycheck.
Yeah, like you'll find the type where it's like, oh yeah, that guy's first in, last out, that sort of thing. But I also feel like a book develops on a guy like that, where it's like, yeah, that guy's coasting on his skill. Like, that guy's just looking for the check. I mean, I feel like you can run into enough people in the game that won't bullshit you and just would say, yeah, I'd keep away.
Yeah, and I think as far as their stadium situation goes, I think Angel Stadium is also kind of at a point where, I mean, it looks like it looks like they renovated back in like the 90s, like in the late 90s they renovated the stadium, but
when they went from being a dual sports stadium to just baseball.
Yeah, because they used to have the LA Rams as well as the Angels, but yeah, that's another team with a stadium that you could be that you could be looking at that you could be looking at some uncertainty in the future. Apparently, they were like trying to make a stadium deal, and apparently they took like they made like $2.75 million.
Oh yeah, there's been all kinds of
Because the
stuff with
deal like
Moreno.
fell apart.
Yeah, and he had it up for sale for about a year and then just pulled it back. And that's another place where everything you read about the Angels is it all starts from there.
Yeah, and it
Moreno's
also
kind of been a meddler, and
it probably doesn't help that like no one in LA really gives a shit about the Angels. Like everyone in LA is like a Dodgers fan. There's like not too many Angels fans out there. Granted, like they play in Anaheim, which is basically like the suburb city of LA and like Disneyland and stuff. But like in that market, like there's so much going on other than sports, and the people that are into sports, there's like a much more popular team than your team. So it's like, how do you really like it'll be tough to, in like taxes in California are high enough. How are you going to like go out and ask the taxpayers to like fund a new stadium for like the B-rate team that, half of them don't really give a shit about anyway. And they're just,
they pissed off Anaheim when they decided to be the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, and now they're just the Los Angeles Angels.
That
was even really won us.
So they slighted Anaheim, and I'd say before all that happened, I'd say they were in a pretty good position when they were the Anaheim Angels. They were going to the playoffs. They won a World Series. So even even if you're like one of these teams that's like I mean, things were different then than they are now, but it's like, yeah, even if you are one of these teams, you might fall into one. But yeah, I mean, Angel Stadium is the fourth oldest ballpark, and the future there seems uncertain. It seems like the team doesn't want them, and the city doesn't really want the team, and they're just kind of granted, Mike Trout has his own issues with staying healthy and staying on the field, but they're also just like wasting away the best the career of probably the best baseball player to come up in either of our generations. So,
and it just, I feel like the baseball, at least online, I feel like everybody gets jokes off about like, oh, Trout never gets there, he's never won this or that, and no, we have fun with it, but it genuinely sucks where it's like look, if he was in it every year and he had like a 150 career average in the playoffs, that's one thing. But you get the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, he hasn't even had that.
Yeah, it's like people joke about playoff Kershaw, but he got enough chances and he finally won one, and he even had a couple of moments.
Yeah,
like Mike Trout hasn't even had the opportunity to do that, and it's not the skill issue. We keep seeing every year when he's out there, he's still the goods. He can't go out and sign the free agents. He's not the one that he can't go down to the minor leagues and show these guys, and that just genuinely sucks that we never get it to even for Ken Griffey's career getting cut short. We have those 95 playoffs.
Yeah,
he got to go a couple of times in his career. We at least have that. Mike Trout, there's a very real chance that never happens for him. That's awful.
That is awful, and not to defend the Angels in any capacity, because they're definitely they're responsible for the mess that they're in. They made their bed and they got to lie in it, or try and find a way to get into a better bed, maybe get in bed with some better owners or some more money. But the thing with Mike Trout though is he's had opportunities to leave Anaheim / LA, whatever, he's had opportunities to leave the Angels and he's just never really took them. He did sign the big extension like a good 5 years ago. I think he signed what was it, like a 12-13 year extension that he signed.
It was like 400 plus.
He didn't have to do that, and like at the time there were lots of rumors that he could come back to like Philly, or that that he could go somewhere somewhere on the East Coast, be closer to home, playing a bigger market, on the East Coast where sports are a bigger deal, and really be like the face of really become like the face of the league. Because he's like the best player in baseball when healthy, but he's not really the face of the league, and it doesn't really seem like he necessarily wants to be. And I think recently in recent years, like I think he's been asked like if he would ever like consider consider being traded, and he was like, no, like I signed my contract here and I intend to play it out. So I mean, he seems, I guess he seems kind of like, he made his bed with the Angels in a way where I guess he is to an extent accepting of those things, accepting of, the situation that the team that he's on is in, and, has been in for quite some time and probably will be in for quite some more time. So it seems like he's kind of accepted that. And, with that, he's kind of accepted that, he's not, probably not going to see the playoffs anytime soon in his career, if he ever does. He doesn't seem to like really want to be like the face of MLB. He doesn't really have like that much of a personality, which is like fine. Like you're a professional baseball player. It's not your job to like be marketable or have a personality. Like if you are, and if you have that to go with your skill set, then great, but it's not like a prerequisite or anything. But
no, I was always fine with that. Like if that's not you, if you're not naturally outgoing or someone who's up for that sort
there's
of thing,
no need to
show up. So
no need to force it. Yeah, no, I agree with that. But yeah, it does seem like in a lot of aspects that he that he's also kind of like complacent with like being an Angel, and that he's not really gonna, because if I was him, I'd probably wonder like, oh, what would my career be like if I like went to like a team that actually knew what they were doing. But yeah, it just more power to him, but it just none of that stuff seems to bother him. I guess he's content making his money and playing baseball when he can, and
being paid as the world's most famous Eagles fan. That's got to be an interesting life.
Yeah.
I would bet, I've said this to people that don't watch baseball. I would bet you there's a decent chance more people know Mike Trout as that guy. Oh, that's the guy at the Eagles games they always show. Then they know that, oh, that's a 3-time MVP. I know the number's not zero, because any Eagles game, because we get into the season and the Angels aren't playing, And it's, hey, there's Mike Trout in the front row again today. I feel like every Eagles game he's there.
Yeah. Yeah, he might. Yeah, in some circles he might be more known for that. So yeah, there's definitely some validity to that. Yeah, and it is kind of crazy. That's probably like the most, like, outside of playing baseball, that probably is like the most, like, I guess, like, marketable outside of baseball thing about him is that he's like this big Eagles fan. But rounding out our top 5 most doomed organizations. So would you put the Marlins at number 5 then, or do you have someone else in mind? So I mean, for me, it's probably the Marlins.
See, it's a valid call to put the Marlins there, but also we've seen they've won 2 titles and they've done it in 2 completely different ways. Obviously, in '97, they went all in for that year, and in '03, yeah, they did have a
happened
couple
by accident.
And they had Pudge, and they did have a couple of veterans in there, but those were mostly their guys that came up through the system and they developed. So it's possible to win in Miami. It takes something extraordinary for it to happen, sure, but you can win there. Now, it's going to take some onus. You need an owner that cares a little bit, but it can happen. I do feel, and it kind of ties into this week, the Pirates might actually have a shot right now. And the best they could get was IKF.
Yeah. Yeah.
They had
him
that 3
and
years
Brian De La Cruz.
They had those 3 years with Kutch and Polanco and Marte and Cole and all them. And it never really felt like the Pirates went and made that one more move they needed, whatever that needed to be.
To really,
but they were there too.
Yeah. Although there are some people that there are people you could ask that would tell you, and I'm not sure how you'd feel about this as a Mets fan, but I have friends that are Pirates fans that say they say they would go to their grave and they would say that if the Pirates beat the Cubs in the 2015 wild card game, that team would have went to the World Series and won.
That's pretty good.
But yeah, ultimately they didn't get it done.
No. If you could hit Jake Arrieta, what were you going to do against Harvey DeGrom and Thor? Sure, okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Next time I hear
Jake Arrieta, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, next time I hear one of them say that, I'm going to tell them that. I'll be like, yeah, well, you would have had to deal with all those guys in their primes. So yeah, good luck, I guess. Like, more power to you if you think that, but may not necessarily be true. But yeah, I mean, no, you're totally right. I mean, yeah, this could be like another one of those windows with Paul Skeens and O'Neill Cruz and Brian Reynolds and Old Man Kutch. And they got
a couple of top picks that are not that far off.
Yeah, and they Jamar Johnson, he should be waiting in the wings in the next couple of years. Hank Davis hasn't really panned out as of yet. But they also have Joey Bart, who hasn't necessarily panned out, but all these guys were top picks for a reason, so they could turn it around at some point. I think there's a case for the Pirates, but I think with the Pirates, it's like you could be looking at another window of the next couple of years where they could potentially get something done. But like you said, it's like at the deadline you go and get Brian De La Cruz. Brian De La Cruz is good. I think that's a good addition for them.
It's better than what they had.
Yeah, it's better than what they had in their lineup. IKF, you can make the same case too. But when it comes to all right, if we're really gonna, if this is how your team is, if you're a team that's not gonna spend money, you're not gonna land free agents, you have to pay players proactively, when they're willing to, when they're willing to get ahead on that, and when you're able to get ahead of that, you have to do that. and you kind of have to rely on trades to to build a contending team for a short window of time. Like if that's the team that if that's the life that you've chosen as Bob Nutting, who I believe he said that, I think that recently I saw this YouTube video where they were saying that he, what do you call it? Like they wanted to upgrade like their training facility in Bradenton, Florida. Like, cause it's a little bit outdated. Like they wanted to update their training facilities and stuff. And Bob Nutting essentially said like, yeah, if you want to upgrade this, like that money would have to come out of the on the field payroll, which there's barely any payroll to begin with. So like it just wasn't, it just didn't happen.
There's no spinning that.
Yeah, no, he's a scumbag, and the people of Pittsburgh do deserve better. But so I mean, there is a case for them, even though they currently find themselves like in a window, and the Pirates. I mean, the Pirates are generally, they have a terrible owner, and generally speaking, they're a pretty poorly run organization. But I will give them credit for one thing. I think they've handled the development of Paul Skeens very well. Because there have been several times where he has been, had a no hitter going through 6 or 7 innings, and they still were able to they were still able to make the decision to take him out of those games to preserve his arm. They've been very good about that with the whole pitch count and making sure that they preserve his arm. They haven't messed at all with his wacky pregame routines or anything. They've kind of just let him do his thing. So I think that I do think they've done a pretty good job with that. And he hasn't really missed a beat. They're even with Garrett Cole when he came up and he was this highly touted prospect, and as good as he was for the Pirates, they tried to make him a pitch to contact pitcher, and then
you got to develop a sinker, right?
yeah, and then he goes to Houston, and then he goes to New York, and it's oh, you could throw 99 miles an hour. You have a 96 mile an hour sinker. Why not use that? So,
I feel like if the Rays front office was in Pittsburgh right now with all the same constraints, because I saw people drop the parameters of this, I would bet you that front office would have went and got Luis Robert.
I could see it.
For however longer he would have been in Pittsburgh, and they probably wouldn't have been able to afford him. But it's hey, look, we've got 3 starting pitchers right now. We have Reynolds, we have Cruz, we have Hayes, we have guys. This probably just needs one definitive bat to carry them, and Luis Robert would have been such a perfect fit for that team.
Yeah, I think he would have been a good fit. He's another guy that's hitting around 200. I think he might be a little overrated, but at the same time, he's definitely better than what they currently have. I do think that Brian De La Cruz was a good get. But ultimately, if this is what their version of going for it is, when they have a limited window to compete before they inevitably probably lose these players to free agency. I mean, Paul Skeens just came up, and people are already talking about how he's going to be a Yankee in 2030 or whatever, or a Dodger, and I can't say I necessarily disagree. His girlfriend, it seems like, is always either in New York or LA, when Skeens isn't starting. So, I don't know what's going on there. And his girlfriend's from New Jersey. He's from LA. So I could definitely see them ending up on one of the coasts when it is time, when that time does come. But, if that's your version of going for it in this window, it's definitely a little underwhelming. And then, it's what happens after this 2 to 3 year window passes? You're just going back to what you were. So, they could be doomed in that sense, but, they do have a chance. They do have a window right now. And I'd say that then, whether you want to put them or the Marlins at number 5 on the list, I'd say either one is pretty, you could make a case for either one. But if you don't have any final thoughts, that's going to do it for us here today. We went a little. I think this is our longest episode yet. We start talking about baseball and we just don't shut up. So hopefully you all are having hopefully you're all having as much fun as we are. And make sure, of course, that you are following our social medias at BDPod24, at MIPod69, at Ascension Pod Network, at Ascension Pod NW. JD's Just Talking, and Meta World Beast. You can see it on the ticker down below. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel as well as Middle Initial Podcast. I believe Middle Initial Podcast is also recording an episode tonight. I believe they are. I believe they're talking with some Jets season ticket holders about their experiences as a season ticket holder and the treatment that they have received from the team. So, that should be pretty interesting. The only thing I'd have to add on that is I am a Pirates ballpark pass holder, and I get nothing. All I get is text messages every day.
Oh,
but no, I don't care. It's text messages like the morning of every game, just asking whether or not I'm coming. And if I just have to say yes, and they'll send me my ticket.
Okay.
I don't really expect a care package from them or anything.
But also they don't have to, but I guess in the Pirates' favor here, they don't have PSLs. I feel like that's a
the PSLs
that doesn't become a thing in baseball.
It better not. I hope everyone just kind of learns from the MetLife Stadium situation that PSLs are just an absolute disgrace and an absolute scam, and no one should ever entertain that as being acceptable. But yeah, that is going to do it for us here today. We will play the intro and we will get the hell out of here. Thanks for listening, and bye.